My name is Neil Atkinson and I'm head of the Oil Industry and Markets Division at the International Energy Agency based in Paris. And I've come to Madrid to talk to the Spanish Energy Club about the long-term 5-year outlook that the IEA published earlier this year for oil markets. The outlook takes us to 2022, and the research that we've done and the report that we've published throws up a lot of very interesting challenges and questions for the oil industry as we try and see what's going to happen over the next few years. As far as the big picture is concerned, we're expecting oil demand to continue growing to 2022 by at least 1.2 million barrels a day or so every year on average, which means a total growth over the period of about 7.3 million barrels a day. So fairly solid demand growth, led primarily by the petrochemical sector and also by transport fuels, which are growing particularly strongly, of course, in developing countries such as China and India. So very steady growth in global oil demand in the period to 2022 of 7.3 million barrels a day. The question we now have to answer is, with oil demand growing so steadily over this period, will there be sufficient oil production growth to meet that demand? And here the question gets a little bit cloudy because we're unclear exactly what will happen. And the starting point we have is that in the last couple of years, 2015 and 2016, we've seen investment in the upstream oil sector fall dramatically. In both of those 2 years, it fell by about 25% year on year. And that raises serious implications for the oil industry in the future, because if investment doesn't start to recover soon, there will not necessarily be sufficient oil production capacity available by the end of our forecast period to meet the expected increases in demand that we've already identified. But having said that, there is investment taking place, of course, in the United States, and particularly in the shale oil production areas, which saw a huge increase in production a few years ago. It fell back, of course, when oil prices fell from $100 a barrel to $50 a barrel, and it's currently increasing again very strongly as investment is flowing into the sector. We're also seeing very strong increases in production capacity in Brazil and in Canada, and also to some extent in Kazakhstan. And in those three cases, that's a result of investments that have been made in very long-term projects, very capital-intensive projects, but projects which are still coming to fruition in the lower oil price era because of cost-cutting and efficiency improvements that they've been able to achieve. So increases in production from the US, from Brazil and Canada and Kazakhstan. But beyond 2018, 2019, because of the big cutback in oil investments that I mentioned a moment ago, we can't be sure that there will be continued growth in oil production out to the end of our forecast period. So, with demand growing very strongly to 2022, with production growing strongly in the early years of our forecast, but falling back as we get to the end of the forecast period, we are faced with the possibility that the amount of spare production capacity available in the world to meet demand growth will fall to very, very low levels. And indeed, by 2022, the amount of spare production capacity available in the world will be less than 2% of global demand. Now, we should bear in mind that back in 2008, when oil prices increased dramatically, that happened at a time when spare production capacity was around 4% of total demand. In 2022, we think that cushion will only be 2%. We're not saying that there is the risk of a significant spike in oil prices after 2020, but it is a possibility unless we see a significant increase in oil investment in the next few years. And it's this increase in oil investment, which we believe is necessary, is the biggest challenge facing the oil industry today if we are to continue to see relatively stable oil markets. I hope everybody who reads the Oil Report 2017 finds it of interest, and there's data and analysis in it which helps shape their own views as they go about their work in trying to understand the oil market. And of course, at the IEA, we're very, very happy to take questions or take observations on our work. and try and understand from people out there in the marketplace where our analysis could perhaps be improved, or even where our analysis is absolutely spot on and is likely to prove valuable in the 5 years ahead. So I hope you find it of interest, and we look forward to coming to Madrid again next year to talk about the 2018 edition of the oil report. Thank you very much.